Hi, everybody. Today we are having another episode of our Obscure Animation, and this is the show that we like to do once a month where we like to talk about smaller indie animated films, and it's a lot of fun. We really enjoy getting to do it. And this month we are talking about a film called Away, which is a one-man band film made by the artist Gintz Zil Balotis. Sorry, I probably butchered your name and I
I don't know
apologize.
how to say it either. We'll call him
Yeah.
Gintz.
And it's really an interesting film from 2019. I'm film critic Rachel Wagner and Stanford is here.
Hey, how's it going?
Doing well. How are you?
Hey, all is well. Thank you.
Good. Good to
This
hear.
was so fun to watch this movie. Thank you again, as always, Rachel, for introducing me to such cool movies.
Well, I think that my friend Cameron, I think was the one who told me about it, recommended it. I could be wrong. Somebody, one of my friends was telling me this was their favorite movie from 2019, that they loved it, and I said, "Ooh, we're gonna talk
Better
about that
check it
first,"
out.
because I'd never heard of it. I'd never seen
Yeah,
it.
I hadn't heard of it either
Yeah,
until you had
and
suggested it. Yeah.
that I mean that's says something because I usually I try to watch every single animated film that's submitted to
Yeah.
the Academy, and so somehow I missed this one. I don't know how I did, but I love these one man shows. I just think it's so incredible
I do
in
too.
the day where your animated films have 400 plus employees working on it. You have huge over $100 million budgets, and you have these people that make animated films from their apartments. It's really, really cool.
It's amazing. And not only did he do all the animation, he wrote the soundtrack. He wrote the
Oh, yeah.
score.
Yeah.
And Um, anyway, talk about tour de force. I was, yeah, very, very impressed.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Girl Without Hands that we covered earlier on the podcast,
Yeah.
and that is Sebastian Laudenbach, and he was a one-man show as well, did everything, and I just think that's so great that that still can happen.
I do too, and I don't know where he got his funding or, whatever, uh, consortium his work, but he was able to show it at, uh, Annecy in
Mhm.
2019, and, anyway, I watched it on, I rented it on Amazon Prime, but I think also did we say it was on Tubi?
Yes, that's how I watched it, was on Tubi.
Okay.
So you just have to deal with the ads if you watch
Yeah.
on Tubi. But yeah, it's and then you can rent it. And I found an interview with him. He doesn't say whether he had crowdsourcing or what he did. I know that he did shorts first,
Yes.
and then he moved on to the feature, and now I guess his next project he's going to be doing a more of a team project.
Oh, cool.
And
Okay.
yeah, and so I think that's sort of the next step, is sort of these small team projects. Like you have Signe Bomine, who we did Rocks in My Pockets. I think she
Yeah.
has like 3 or 4 people, very small. Or someone like Bill Plimpton, who we also talked about. He has a small
Yeah.
group of people. There's animators like that, and then uh, you have sort of your even maybe your next level after that, your independent studios like your cartoon saloons and things like that. And I think a lot of people think that that all we have is these big budget Disney, DreamWorks, kind of things. And it isn't until maybe the Oscars come around and you have a movie like the Boy in the World, I think is what it was called.
Uh-huh.
That you have a movie like that people are like, what is that? And
Yes.
these smaller films, and so I think that that's just really, really cool. And I'm so grateful that we have these artists who are willing to put in so much of that labor and that time, and and do it all on their own. It's incredible.
It is. It's just so impressive. I just kept thinking the whole time, like, I can't believe he did this all by himself.
Mhm.
I just can't believe it.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So what
Yeah.
did it take? About 3 years, Rachel? Isn't that what
Um
I think I read somewhere?
yeah. And he said in the interview, he said they asked that he said, "How do you think your style fits into the wider animation landscape?" And he said, I think animation is recently going through the explosion of independent studios and artists coming up with all sorts of unique styles and stories, especially in Europe. A lot more than in North America or Asia. These smaller studios are coming together. It's a great time for that. And he says, I think even in those terms, Away is a bit different because it was made just by me, which is maybe what makes it unique. I embrace the 3D animation and that digital look, which some people try to avoid or try to make it perfect or very detailed. I went in a different direction where I embraced those imperfections of the digital animation. I tried to use those to my advantage. So, yeah, he did. He says, with the way I did everything myself for my shorts, the music was made by someone else, but I did the music in a way. And so, yeah, he really just he says, I'm in the early stage of setting up my next project with a team, which is exciting, but also a bit scary to give up that control. So, yeah, it sounds like he transitioned from doing the shorts. And it was fun recently for Sundance. I interviewed all the animators for the shorts of Sundance, and it was just really fun to see their passion and their excitement, and to kind of maybe see what they're going to do next, kind of similar to what Gintz did after having those successes with shorts.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Uh And I'm just, I was just trying to picture, like, what's his work setup? Is he just in some,
Yeah.
just in his little apartment, uh, or something? He's got all these uh, computers or whatnot. But anyway, and I think, initially I was so impressed with. I mean, just throughout the movie too, but it's a really cool artistic style that he uses. I think.
Oh yeah.
That it's clearly it's CGI, but it's not, um, you know, I don't know, it's so minimalist, but I think that's what makes it so pretty.
Yeah, he says on his Twitter that he made it all on his home laptop.
That's so rad.
And he used I guess a software called Maya is the name
Maya,
of the
yeah.
software. And we'll talk a little more about kind of the style that he had, but yeah, it's a very simple movie in a lot of ways. As far as, I mean, it's really just a person walking from one spot to another spot is about all the plot that you get.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of interesting things that he does in there. And so yeah, he did it all himself, and he released it in 2019 at the Annecy International Film Festival, where he won an award. And then he continued to have it at other different festivals. And so yeah, and we're going to talk also about, definitely about the sound mixing and the soundtrack of the movie. But overall, what was your overall kind of takeaway from watching the film?
Well, again, such huge props to Gintz for this because I was so amazed that he was able just to do this by himself. I loved. I thought really, just beautiful. I loved uh, so much of how he composed so many of his shots. I thought that was just done with such a wonderful artistic flair, and then just this, and the music, and an interesting message. Uh, I'm not sure I completely understood the story,
Yeah,
But
I didn't even really feel like there was a strong message to the movie. I don't know. That's why I was reading this interview to see if he said anything, but
yeah,
he didn't have much that he was saying even when they asked him kind of about it.
yeah.
It's uh he let's see if I can find where he says they ask him about the spirit and the bird, and he says I don't really have one specific term. I've described it as the dark spirit or monster. And he says it's like more like a force of nature's intention is to not hurt anyone. It's very early stages. And the bird character, I enjoyed animating and added more scenes with him as I realized how his story is very similar to the boy's story. He's also separated from his group and on a journey. It was quite simple to have only a few characters because they could all really focus in them. And in my next film, I have a lot more characters. So yeah, it's kind of about the journey, I guess, about being
Yeah. I mean,
separated from a group.
I wondered if it was in some ways, and I'm stretching, but influenced by like a hero's journey
Yeah,
type of thing. Joseph Campbell and the Power of Myth, that type of thing, because and maybe that island is a metaphor for life. I know we'll get
yeah.
into more into some of these details, but and again, I also was thinking, well, I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I was really trying to contextualize it and trying to. I wondered
Yeah.
if there was a message for us, or again, if it was just
Well, he says
an
that
experience.
yeah, he says that because he divides it into the chapters, which is also kind of I was a little bit confused by
I
that,
was
but
confused by that too, because again, I thought artistically it was interesting, but didn't mean anything.
yeah, he says that he didn't storyboard anything, that he just would go every day and work. And so that maybe is partly why it doesn't feel super message heavy, is my guess.
Yeah,
'Cause he was kind of pantsing it, to use the author term.
and I don't mean to criticize that either, because it was his choice. But uh, again, I think just as a view, as someone watching the film, I think I was
Yeah.
maybe I wasn't. Hopefully, I wasn't working too hard, but I was still just trying to figure out.
Kind of reminded me a little bit of The Wandering Mare
Yeah,
that we reviewed
yeah,
last year, just in, I don't know, and just in sort of the tone and
the
feel of it.
tone. But
Yeah.
I was so impressed with again, as I mentioned, the shots, the cinematic quality of how he moves his quote unquote camera, through
Yeah.
through the scenes, and um, the some of that. In fact, I was wishing I was watching it on the big screen. I just watched it on my TV at home, and
Mhm.
I mean, it looked great. It was a very nice copy
Yeah.
of it, but
Here's a question and this is something I've been thinking about for a long time, not just about this film, but when we see certain films, we kind of make excuses for their flaws, right? So we'll say, "Oh, well, they had a very small budget."
right,
And or somebody got sick or whatever. Like we know the backstory on the film, right? And then
yeah,
you have other people, and I do this all the time with Hallmark movies, so I'm as guilty as anybody else. But and then you have people who don't know that backstory, and they just watch it like any other film, and they're like, "Wow, that was weird. Why did they do that?" And but in my head, I can say, "Well, I know that he just made it by himself, so I'm gonna,
yeah,
gonna give it." And so I was curious for your thoughts about that because we do that all the time with classic films too.
oh
We'll
yeah,
watch it and we'll say, well, so and so was, I don't know, in a bad relationship, or like we know the backstory. We
hmm
know that, oh, they had to mortgage their house to make this film, or we know that that this was the first animated film to ever be made so we make excuses for Snow White, which I love Snow White. Just I just feel like we do that, and how much should we do that? You know what I'm saying?
yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get it, and uh, I know it seems like that. Maybe that's part of understanding, about the film.
Mhm.
But you're right. It's almost sometimes I think too, sometimes this needs to, you know, art's for art's sake, like, you know, the MGM logo says in Latin. But, you know, it's just a let's evaluate this as a piece of art rather than, uh, yeah, putting all this other stuff as you see, around. That's a really good point.
Well, no, I mean, it's just interesting because, like, we reviewed the Adventures of Mark Twain, for instance, and that we were just kinda like, "Oh, not really that into it."
That was
We weren't that
rough.
into it. We weren't that into it.
Well, it was not a very good film either.
But but we didn't make, like, the excuses for it. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
that's true. It's true. Yeah,
And so I think it's kind of an interesting phenomenon that we do. Everybody does it, and especially if it's a director that, I mean, I try not to do it that much so that I can be as objective as possible as a film critic, but everyone does it a little bit.
yeah,
And I'm not necessarily convinced that that's bad because, like you're saying, that it's all sort of part of the artistic experience. But I mean, people do it all the time with their favorite directors, or
yeah.
you say, "Oh well, we know this about it," so we
Yeah, well, and I guess in the case of this film, because Gintz made this just by himself, that to me almost elevates it,
Mhm.
just because it's like, are you kidding me? That's amazing. He did this all by himself, and maybe an excuse too for, well, maybe I didn't really couldn't figure out any story, and the reason why is because he was doing it, by himself or didn't storyboard it or whatever. But anyway, yeah,
It's
it's
interesting.
interesting. It kind of goes both ways.
Uh-huh. Well,
Yeah.
and also because you know that he did it by himself, it's almost like it adds more of a message because you have this character that's all by themselves,
Right.
right? And so it
Yeah.
adds a whole nother layer that if you didn't know that backstory and you just were on Tubi, oh, I'll watch this movie, click, you would have no idea.
Hmm.
And it would be a totally different experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, anyway, but yeah, it starts out with this teen that is hanging on a parachute in a tree,
Yeah.
and
In a very desolate landscape
mhm,
too.
yeah.
Uh,
And one thing I liked about it because they're using this Maya software, and sometimes those kinds of films can have a really pasty kind of look to them. And like I enjoy watching the Barbie movies. I've watched a number of them and reviewed a number of them on this channel. But again, talk about making excuses. I understand the budget and I understand the time and everything when I'm watching them, but they have that kind of a little bit of that sort of pasty computer
hmm.
computer animation look.
Yeah.
And what I think is impressive that he was able to do was he was able to execute his vision without it looking that way,
Yeah.
and he was able to take the tools that he had and, like he talked about in the interview, and make them to his advantage
Right.
because it has a very unique feel. One of the interesting things I thought about it was that most of the time his face doesn't have a mouth or nose.
Yeah, the nose is almost just like a different shading of color, and yeah, and sometimes you don't even see it.
Yeah, it's only when he's like straight on that you
Yeah.
see the mouth and the nose, but most of the time the angles are from and are make it look flat.
Hmm.
And so I think that that's really interesting, and
I
it's
do
just
too, and really, really streamlined character design. His clothing is
mhm,
very monochromatic, and and not a lot of emphasis. I liked what he did with his hair. Uh,
mhm,
you know, uh, Almost like he had like these little dreadlocks or something kind of
yeah,
floating in the air. But I mean, it wasn't distracting. I thought it was nice. It gave it a little personality and movement.
uh-huh,
It would move with the wind and different things, and I liked that. I thought that was
yeah.
a good choice.
Me too, because it really helped you just to focus on the environment and on the
Yes.
character as opposed to or what is happening to the character v- versus the personality of the character.
Hmm.
You kind of are able to forget about that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, this movie kind of reminded me a little bit of something that like Denis Villeneuve would do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
if he were ever to make an animated film.
No, that's a really good point because I think too, I mean, Gints is from Latvia. It has a very European feel to
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
And which again I liked. I thought that made it very, very interesting. I mean, it's not terribly pessimistic like some of the European cinema is, in my
Right.
opinion. But still, though, it had kind of that feeling, kind of that weight.
Yeah, it's interesting because, Signe Bonime is also from Latvia. So, there's, like, a little,
Yeah,
animation scene there.
yeah,
Who knew?
exactly. Who
Who knew?
knew? Well, I love that. I love that opening shot though, with the character
And
in the
tree.
tree,
Mhm.
because it sets up so much stuff. Just like, wow, like what happened to the plane, and where did he come from, and what's he doing here, and
Mhm.
how's he going to get out of the tree? Is what I kept wondering. He's like, is he going to pull a knife out and cut the parachute out so he can drop? Because then, you know, that very ominous figure shows up.
Yeah. We almost wonder watching this, is he dead?
Yeah, I wondered about that too. Is he dead? And then, but also, so this big, tall, slow moving black blob. I mean, it's kind of got a human form. Very.
Kind
I
of
thought
looks
what he
like a
did with the blob was
robot
cool
a little
too.
bit.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if it was. Yeah, you can't really tell if is it a robot? Is it
Yeah. And then
something?
there's all these big arches, these circles. They look like
Yeah,
Stargate.
yeah. That So yeah, you see these arches, and they're almost like that they're a milestone or something, to cross, or they delineate a path, uh, but so my initial impression when I saw the monster, or I would guess I'll call it the monster. I don't know what we'll call
Uh-huh.
the big giant thing.
Yeah.
I wondered if that was like death, kind of
Oh,
like
I can
the
see that.
Grim Reaper uh, type of thing, or you know the ghost of Christmas. Um,
Mhm. Yeah. No, it definitely, I mean, speaking of Villeneuve, it kind of had almost the feel of those, aliens in Arrival.
oh yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Mhm. And, so he finds a backpack full of supplies, and also then finds a motorcycle, and he starts to he starts to ride it, but then he falls off at first, and the whole time the robot is just, or blob or monster, whatever we call it, is just watching. He
Just
just
watching, yeah,
did you
and in
think?
kind of like this slow pursuit. It's like
Yeah,
this slow, methodical pursuit. It doesn't move fast. It doesn't run. It takes kind of baby steps,
yeah.
but
Did
it's persistent.
did you think that he was sinister, that he was gonna kill him or something like that?
Well, I don't know if it was necessarily sinister, but again, I want again, this is just like the English major in me trying to come up with symbolism or whatever.
Yeah.
But to me, that's why I honestly I thought it was death because uh here he is. This young boy is trying to stay alive and keep moving forward, but death is always in the rearview mirror, and I mean that's life.
That makes sense because
Uh,
because the, the previous person who had the motorcycle and bag is obviously gone,
yeah,
and so it makes
and at one point, so the blob does this really weird. I mean, the big creature thing
yeah.
does that weird thing where it'll he like almost like kneels on the ground and then turns into one bigger blob, um, and then uh, like puts his giant mouth over that's what he was trying to do initially until our hero got out of the tree, with the parachute. But that deer that's watching this going on, that deer in the field, he does that to the deer, and then the deer. It appeared to me that the deer died.
Yeah, and then there was an alpaca.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're, like, eating the daisies,
Yeah.
and then, yeah, then he dies.
Mhm.
And or at least I was at first I thought, "Oh, is he sleeping?" But then,
I
uh
wondered about it too. I was like, "No, I bet he." I mean,
yeah.
again, and maybe it's left intentionally vague, but I thought, "No, this is
And
death."
there's 2 birds. There's a yellow bird and a white bird, and the white bird sometimes turns into a fox, I think it is, or something like that.
Mhm.
And, one of the things that really stood out to me was the sound design. What did you think? Did you like it or
Oh,
not
I
like it?
loved the sound
Yeah.
design. I was so impressed with it again because, and I'm glad you brought that up because I'm thinking, okay, not only is he doing the music and the animation, he did a really cool job with the sound design. I thought with the motorcycle,
Mhm. And
that
just
sounded really good. And then just, the
yeah.
animals and the environment and the water and
Yeah, it almost reminded me of Ghibli, the way that
yeah,
when you watch a Ghibli film, every time they step into water, you hear the
yeah.
whoosh, and it's so, like, lush
Hmm.
and visceral, and I thought that he managed to capture that really well, and I'm like, "How did you do that?"
Yeah, I don't know how he did it. I thought
Uh,
it was really cool.
all by himself,
Yeah.
I would like it anyway, but the fact that he did it by himself is just incredible.
And it
Yeah,
really, oh yeah. And the sound really, again, sorry I keep using this word, but it elevates it.
yeah, it does.
Because it's not just keeping it quiet or just relying solely on the music. It adds so much texture
Yeah, it
to
does.
the film and so much to the experience
The
of it.
chirping of the birds
Yes.
and the sound of the wind, all of that was very visceral, very
Hmm.
real. I thought it was very good, and he nurses the yellow
Yeah,
bird.
that little yellow bird, it's almost like I mean, it's got some issues. Yeah, it's something that's going on with this bird, and don't know if it was injured or it clearly and given that it's yellow and all the other, there's the white bird and then those other white birds that we see, you just wonder if it's been separated from his family and almost like or its
Mhm.
tribe, or whatever, its flock. But it's almost like it's having a parallel experience to what the boy is going through as well.
Yeah,
Without, I mean, the boy doesn't necessarily have he got the backpack, but doesn't necessarily have the help because he's able to feed the bird and he puts it in its backpack and ride, drives on the motorcycle, so it travels with him.
yeah. At one point, they get to this elaborate bridge, this wooden bridge, and
That terrifying bridge.
yeah, and so he is very kind of delicate about getting across the bridge, but then the monster, he doesn't make it and falls.
Yeah, he like was able to kind of push a rock down the hill, right, and help kind of facilitate the black monster to fall down. And to me, I thought, oh, he's coming back. But what did you
Yeah,
think when the monster went down the the abyss?
well, I did, but you kind of felt sad for the monster at
Yeah,
that
you do
point.
because the monster. Like how's he making this monster sympathetic? But he did.
He did. He did. And so then uh it almost looks like he's going to be flying. There's this kind of large pond and he's on the motorcycle. It almost looks like the motorcycle's flying.
That's probably one of my favorite scenes of the film. I thought that was so beautiful because, yeah, he's like riding the motorcycle on the water, and there's all those white birds that are reflecting in the water as well as up above in the blue sky, and
Mhm.
um, really a knockout. I thought. What did you think?
Yeah, it was really good. I
Really
mean, and the
pretty.
music really helped there for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. And so then you have chapter 3, Dream Wall it was called, and you see the boy parachuting in space. The rest of the people around him don't have parachutes. They're all jumping
And
and
uh they're all um uh dark, almost like a shadow in a way, you know? I mean, you can see you see their form, their human form, and then those kinda, like, white eyes that almost look like it's like C-3PO or something, or you're the Tin Man or something, you know? I don't know.
Yeah.
That almost make it look like, is it an android? You know, are they androids or what are they? But
Well, even
anyway,
at the end, the white and yellow birds turn into turtles, so they're kind of morphing all around.
yeah,
So that's interesting. And there was a really beautiful scene where he falls through a tunnel, and then the monster comes over the top of the tunnel, and it goes from being black, a beautiful animation, this white character with the black background, and then it goes to more of like a
that
yellow
yellow, that
color. Yeah.
beautiful yellow,
Hmm.
and then, yeah, it goes kinda into
Kind
the
of white.
white. Yeah,
It was really beautiful. That was probably my favorite section of the whole movie.
yeah.
Was the was whatever that was. It was really pretty.
We need Gintz here to tell us,
I know. Come on the
what
podcast. Have
I
a little
know, that would
interview.
be so cool.
uh, and so yeah, I loved that whole sequence, and the you also see just the monsters just falling and falling and falling and falling, and there's sort of no end to his falling,
That's a
and
long drop, yeah,
yeah,
that ravine or whatever that is where that, that bridge, um,
yeah, because
yeah.
he's passed out in the snow, and uh, I think you're probably right about it being death, because there's also no sense of like the him, but he does eat the oranges sometimes, and then there's also the one scene where he's pushing the motorcycle, but then is working again not too long after. So
Yeah,
there's no sense of like running out of gas or anything like that.
yeah,
So this must be kind of like a. Have you ever seen If Dreams May Come?
yeah,
Robin Williams, kind of like that, maybe.
yeah, possibly, yeah, I wonder well, and then also one thing to mention too, Rachel, that in that backpack was a map, right?
Oh,
And
yeah,
you alluded to I mean, you I think you did mention it, but just a little more detail on it.
yeah,
So we're seeing him progressing through, we're going towards something on this map with the and we see it kind of almost with those different like those arches we were talking about, that he drives through and these different areas. And it looks to me like there's some kind of civilization that he's going towards, at
mhm,
least on the map,
yeah,
and we get a glimpse of it, a little later, spoiler alert, but we'll get there. But I again, just I- he's like trying to it seems to me like he's trying to get home, but yeah, again, who knows? I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know.
They say in one of the things I was reading that it's a surreal slow motion chase that spans the next hour and 10 minutes. Yeah.
A good way to put it. Yeah,
Mhm.
because it's like it is a chase movie, isn't it? Yeah, it's just like it's kind of like the whole thing. He's being pursued, even though he's got some kind of a goal that we don't necessarily
Yeah.
understand. He being I'm calling him the hero, uh, but yeah, good
Yeah, I
point.
mean, I think that you could also sort of put Don Hertzfeldt in this whole sort of
Yeah,
camp, these one man kind of animators things, and he does shorts, of course, but that the thing about Don Hertzfeldt is that he's a little bit more on the nose as far as what he's trying to say
uh huh,
with his metaphors, but I don't know, there's something about sort of the tone and the feel that I think there's some similarities there
yeah,
between this and I've seen a lot of terrible Don Hertzfeldt imitators, so
yes,
but I think that this is a pretty good one that he still does his own thing, but there's something about sort of the quietness of
mm-hmm,
both projects that I think
mm-hmm.
is similar.
One
And
thing too, Rachel, is not necessarily to backtrack too much, but I was so impressed how he animated, particularly the yellow bird.
Mhm.
because I mean, it's very cartoony, I mean, it's not, uh, but still, he gives it a lot of really cool, I think, just very bird-like motions, like the way the bird eats and whatnot. Yet still makes it just like, oh, you just want to give it a hug. It's just like this the
Yeah.
cutest little sidekick kind
Well,
of
and
thing.
he doesn't
And
seem to care that it changes sizes all the time.
yeah, see,
I
I
kind of
wanted to
like.
ask you about that because I wondered if that was intentional or just kind of like, oops, I guess they didn't get the size right. I don't know.
Yeah. I kind
That,
of liked it because I felt like it sort of added to the whole ambiance of
uh-huh.
the mystery of it all.
Yeah. And I liked, and I liked the bird too because the bird's got its own character arc. And it's even though the size stuff is weird, but it's like it develops. It's like it heals and grows and changes and in good ways, and like healthy ways. So it's not just like kind of codependent on the boy. It's able to grow up and kind of be its own thing.
Mhm. Yeah. He kind of gets rescued, but then he then ends up helping the
Hmm.
boy.
Yeah.
Um, they asked him this thing. It says, "What was your intention with the characters of the spirit and the bird?" So he says, I don't really have one specific term. I described it as the dark spirit or monster. I think it's okay to call him a monster, but I don't see him as something evil. It's more like a force of nature whose intention is not to hurt anyone. In the very earlier stages, he wasn't even there, and there was no supernatural element. But I realized in my films, I've hardly had anything that's only possible in animation. My stories were quite grounded. I wanted to explore the supernatural or symbolic, and the design also kept evolving. And then he says about the bird. He says, then the bird character, I enjoyed animating him and added more scenes with him as I realized how his story is very similar to the boy's
Yeah.
story. He is also separated from his group and on a journey, and it was quite simple to have only a few characters because they then you can really only focus on. In my next film, I have a lot more characters, and so yeah, I can see that they're both kind of outcasts and both trying to figure out their way home, which is something that's hard to. It's really hard to pull off a movie like this.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a lot of bad versions of these kinds of stories.
Yeah.
They're very pretentious and very, and I didn't feel that way with this. I really
I
didn't.
didn't either. I didn't feel like it was pretentious at all. In fact,
Mm-mm.
I just thought it was uh s- nicely crafted and the techniques you were using, I thought everything furthered the story rather than just like, this
Mhm.
is so flashy or this is so pretentious or whatever.
Right. Yep.
I didn't feel any of that at
And
all.
it's just so beautiful. This movie is
Yeah, the
gorgeous.
color palette is beautiful, and he really, as he had mentioned, he takes such good advantage of those environments. The video, it looked to me a lot like kind of a 19, and I don't mean this as a slam, but it's kind of like a 1990s virtual reality video game kind
Mhm.
of thing.
Yeah.
Um, the way he did the backgrounds and stuff, but I thought he used that to his full advantage.
Uh-huh.
The way he crafted all those different environments on the island.
Also loved the whole sequence where the white bird is finally joined with his with other white birds, and you see it's right around when he's driving across the lake, and you see just this whole troop, I guess, of white birds,
Oh
and
yeah,
I thought that whole sequence was beautiful.
beautiful. Yeah, it was
They're
beautiful.
beautiful. It reminded me a little bit of Miyazaki. I thought
Uh huh.
that's and it was very pretty. So I think he did a great job. I think he should be very proud
Oh, I do
of
too.
this film.
I do too. So impressive. And so well, yeah, just so well crafted. One final thing about the stories is he it appears that he arrives to his destination, or he gets really close to that home, just because you see it looks like you see in the distance some kind of civilization and some tall ships with some sails. They don't really explain it, but at least in a way, it feels like there's some resolution,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
also the demise or disappearance of the monster too. That's been pursuing him.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely there's definitely something supernatural going on because not only do you have the monster, but you also have those weird circles.
Yeah, yeah,
And you're like, who built those? What did they do?
yeah. What do they do? What are they about?
Hmm. So
And yeah, those encounters with the turtles and all these the things that again were interesting. I don't understand them. I was trying to put meaning on it. You know how there's that turtle that he encounters a couple of times, and then the turtle ends up needing to be rescued. It's flipped over on its back, and
mhm.
it can't get over. You know,
Yeah, but
turn
then
itself over.
it ends up being having the yellow eyes like the bird.
Yeah. So, like, Gins, please tell us what this means.
Yes.
We love this movie. Tell us what it
Yeah.
means.
So this was a really fun one. I really enjoyed watching it and
Me
talking
too.
about it. So if you all have seen Away, let us know what you think it's trying to say. Did you enjoy it? We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you have any ideas for other films like this that we could talk about, just let us know in the comments. And Stanford, where can people find you?
On Twitter, I'm at Stanford Clark, and I have a movie podcast and blog at moviespastandpresent.com.
Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. Check that out. Also, you can find me at the Hallmarkies Podcast. Lots of fun stuff going on over there. And so thanks so much. And congratulations to Gintz for making it a really great film. And consider make sure you check out our Patreon. We have our merch store, which has hashtag animation junkie shirts. So check that out. And thanks so much. And we'll talk to you all later. Bye
Bye.
everyone.